when we started this work, we started in India, but we knew we had to work all over the Asia. And then the ADRF, that is Durga, Manjula, Sono, Zakir Bhai, Bhakta, Deena, and other friends, Father Aloy, of course. We felt that we needed to have a body which can strengthen this work across the world. And we cannot do it from India because India does not allow any finance to go out of the country. And so also all the countries so ADRF has commissioned me to initiate a non-profit externally. And so we looked at Thailand, and we looked at Singapore, we looked at Hong Kong. Then finally we settled down to US because that allowed non-citizens to be able to register a non-profit and manage it. So at that time, Rose, who was one of the directors in the International Budget Project, has supported this cause. So thank you, and thank you to ADRF for supporting. When during the lunchtime, others, please feel free to meet us.
I'll be really brief. Just to give a brief overview of what we did yesterday. We had some wonderful presentations from Rita Isaac and Kenneth Deere. Rita's focused on sort of a strategy, a paper that she wrote that delineated a strategy for how we can intervene at the United Nations, and Kenneth, at the very end of the day, spoke to us about his experience with the Indigenous Peoples Movement. And throughout those presentations and the conversations that we had, it became very clear the necessity of being unified within a clear and deliberative process. And then in the third session, we had regional meetings in which we laid out the plans for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years of what the people from each region would like to see accomplished. So today is really about two things. It is going to be about making clear what, as a group, the overall action plan is that we can all be unified behind, to make it clear, to make it deliberate, so that we can focus on a regional level and at a global level and make sure that we're all working in conjunction together. And then we will also be beginning today a much larger conversation about identity and what the identity of CDWD means, and how that can collaborate with with everybody's individual identities. So that's what today will be about.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We have some unfinished business from yesterday afternoon because we had started our group presentations about what we had discussed in our regional groups. We heard from the Asia group, but we'd like to continue and hear what the other groups have discussed. It will help us to shape our plans for later this afternoon. So if I can invite, perhaps, I recognize up there the Diaspora group's discussions, and hopefully Bina is from that group and standing right next to the text. She is our rapporteur. Bina, would you like to take the floor and present some of the discussion from the Diaspora group, please?
So a lot of similar things between the Asia group and us, but on the UN goals, we thought that we should get a working group on not in the UN, but of civil society in New York. So looking at how we can engage the non-identity-based groups, be part of the NGO committees. So there are a lot of committees, specifically the one on social development. We thought that we should have a Diaspora Coordination Committee, which is an internal committee within the diaspora living here, because many of them have regular jobs, and so how do we ensure that people do this work and give some time for it. Of course, some of the goals were more visibility for GFOD, linking of course with country missions, some of the countries, Senegal, Germany, Costa Rica, Canada. regular statements to go out, and also engage with the different forums within the UN mechanism. Like, for example, there's the youth forum. How do we ensure that we get our voices into that? And in terms of the regional work or the local work that is here, is recently the Council of Jersey City has declared April 14th, which is the birth date of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, as an Equality Day. So can we have more of meetings at the council level to ensure that we have more buy-in from local councils, because the local councils in the US are quite powerful in itself, and they have their own mechanisms. There is a permanent mission of Vatican, which is a very important because there were a lot of other religious institutions and representatives from the institutions here. So that was one idea of linking. The Ambedkar International Mission to anchor engagement with other bodies similarly. There is the World Council of Churches, UCC, are also some institution other than UN that we can link up so that they can also take our issues. And of course, regional, in terms of regional Asia, we thought we'll have, the other thing was very important is that linking up with other diaspora within, now right now we're a very strong Dalit diaspora, but how do we link up with, the Roma community or the other communities, Haratin, etc. from the rest of the world. And of course, regional, we have UNESCAP, ECA, which is the Economic Council of Africa. In terms of year 3, what we have said is definitely this linking and engaging with similarly discriminated groups. Still, it takes us to creating a very solid group by the end of 3 years. Then, of course, all the commissions, Commission of Status of Women, Commission of Social Development, Youth Forum, Financing for Development. And finally, we would like at the Human Rights Council for a resolution. There are resolutions on violence against women, etc., but a resolution on DWD specifically, so that it can mention. And of course, we are hoping that in year 5 we get our declaration and a space at the UN in some form or the other. We also thought that in this whole engagement, we should have a pool of young leaders that we train so that they can also take up, they can also, engage and start engaging from now. We thought we'd have a newsletter that can be circulated with some of these so that we can get more, visibility online. And of course, across this, all these issues, what we have said is that social media and media is very important, and how do we visibilize our issues that's across the board from the first year to the final. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Meena, and for the Diaspora group for your brainstorming on those excellent ideas. I'd like to invite now a representative from the Africa group to present the key findings from their discussion.
Le groupe s'est réuni hier et on a passé énormément de temps à discuter d'abord de la réalité du vécu des personnes vivant, en tout cas, des esclaves, des castes, et voir un peu quelles étaient les différences qui existaient entre le système des castes et d'esclavage qui existe ailleurs et celui qui existe. Et en Afrique, en tout cas, si on se limite à la question de la discrimination basée sur le travail et sur la naissance, on se rend compte que c'est des phénomènes qui sont très localisés sur le continent. Il y a des régions qui ne sont pas totalement concernées par ce phénomène. L'Afrique du Nord là, l'Afrique de l'Ouest nécessairement, une partie de l'Afrique centrale, mais quand on descend vers l'Afrique australe, l'Afrique de l'Est et autres, maintenant, en tout cas, il est difficile d'utiliser les mêmes termes pour caractériser un certain nombre de situations. Ça, c'était une première chose qu'on avait discutée. La deuxième chose qu'on avait aussi examinée, c'est le fait que on est dans un contexte où les États ont peu de respect pour le droit. D'abord, la nature même de l'État qu'on a en Afrique est un État très fragile, est un État qui est dans une situation tellement difficile liée à la mauvaise gestion des affaires publiques, à la corruption et autres, qui fait qu'il est difficile pour cet État-là de pouvoir mettre en œuvre un certain nombre d'engagements qui ont été en tout cas pris au niveau international, au niveau africain, parce qu'on a une charte africaine des droits de l'homme et des peuples, on a une charte africaine des droits et du bien-être de l'enfant, on a un protocole relatif aux droits des femmes, donc on a un cadre juridique qui est assez élaboré et qui peut permettre la protection des droits. Troisième élément qu'on avait aussi discuté, c'est le fait que l'État en Afrique n'a pas tenu les promesses qui ont été faites à l'origine, en tout cas au début des indépendances. Au début des indépendances, on a lutté pour l'indépendance, pour l'égalité entre les personnes, pour la souveraineté de l'État, mais aussi pour faire en sorte que les droits de chacun puissent être respectés. Or, cet État, comme je vous l'ai décrit, était dans l'incapacité de tenir tous ces engagements. On a par exemple une justice qui est tellement décriée en Afrique, sauf dans quelques rares pays, qu'il est difficile de voir les personnes qui sont victimes des violations de leurs droits puissent aller devant la justice et faire revendiquer un certain nombre de droits. Ça également, c'était un élément qui a été souligné. Peut-être une quatrième considération, c'est le fait que nous sommes aussi dans une région, l'Afrique comme région du monde, mais l'Afrique aussi comme étant un continent dans lequel on a essayé de diviser les rôles à partir des régions. On a, en tout cas, l'Union africaine a décidé de faire de l'Afrique 6 régions, 5, nord, sud, est, ouest et centre. Et la 6e, c'est la diaspora, qui doit jouer aussi un rôle important dans le développement économique, dans la protection des droits. Et c'est pour ces raisons que vous voyez par exemple en Afrique de l'Ouest, parce que la plupart des représentants africains qui sont ici viennent de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. On a une communauté économique régionale qui est la CDAO et qui joue un rôle important dans la protection des droits. Là également, on a pensé que ça aurait pu être en tout cas une porte d'entrée pour discuter de ces questions. Je pense également qu'on avait aussi discuté, mais ça c'était, on avait un peu débordé, parlant de est-ce qu'une déclaration est intéressante, est importante pour nous, alors que il y a eu tellement de déclarations, tellement de décisions prises au niveau international concernant les droits des personnes de manière générale. Est-ce qu'on avait vraiment besoin, alors que nos États ne s'intéressent même pas au respect de ces droits, on avait besoin d'adopter encore une autre déclaration pour mettre l'emphase sur la discrimination basée sur le travail et basée sur les origines. Ça a pris énormément de temps et donc finalement tout ce qu'on vient de dire pour 1 heure de temps, on n'a pas pu terminer. On s'est simplement attaché à redire que bon, même si la déclaration est quelque peu désuète, mais ce ne serait pas mauvais de reprendre la déclaration et de voir l'usage qu'on pourrait en faire dans chacune des régions du monde. Et donc on s'en remettrait un peu à la décision qui serait prise, mais étant entendu que dans des contextes comme le nôtre, la mise en œuvre d'une telle déclaration pouvait ne pas être la bonne solution, mais qu'on était ouvert à une meilleure conversation, une meilleure discussion Donc voilà, grosso modo, je crois. Je ne sais pas si, voilà, si les collègues peuvent compléter les points saillants qu'on avait eu à traiter, même si on avait dit que les mécanismes africains pouvaient aussi être activés pour faire valoir un certain nombre de choses. Voilà ce que je peux. Merci.
Bonjour tout le monde. J'espère que vous êtes bien réveillés. Donc, dans l'exercice, on avait deux objectifs sur lesquels on devait répondre par rapport aux objectifs des Nations Unies et par rapport aux objectifs au niveau régional. Donc, le groupe a discuté, on a identifié un certain nombre d'éléments sur lesquels on doit se baser pour essayer de faire des alliances fortes pour cette déclaration que nous sommes en train d'envisager d'écrire pour les Nations Unies. Bon, au niveau des Nations Unies, on a dit qu'il est important de se faire des alliances au niveau des partis, des États partis au niveau des Nations Unies. Il n'est pas sans doute que le système des Nations Unies est un forum des États. Donc il est important d'avoir des États alliés, comme on a discuté la fois dernière avec le chargé de mission, la mission permanente de Costa Rica. Il est important aussi de faire des alliances auprès des missions, des États accrédités auprès des Nations Unies, pour qu'ils puissent porter notre cause pour inscrire les communautés discriminées sur le travail et l'ascendance au niveau des Nations Unies. Au niveau régional, on a souligné qu'il y a des instruments de l'Union africaine sur lesquels on peut se baser, qui sont des instruments de protection et de promotion des droits humains. On a la Charte africaine des droits de l'homme, on a la Cour africaine des droits de l'homme, on a la Charte africaine des droits et bien-être de l'enfant, on a la Charte africaine de la transparence pour les élections démocratiques et libres. On a l'architecture africaine pour la paix. Il y a des instances qui travaillent uniquement pour la paix, pour lutter contre la discrimination au niveau de l'Afrique. On a également la CDWD, qui est une organisation très solide, qui a même rendu des arrêts de lutte contre l'esclavage. En dehors de ces éléments, on a discuté même du contenu de la déclaration qu'on voudrait élaborer ultérieurement. On a demandé à ce que cette déclaration doit cibler les parlementaires, le Conseil économique, social et environnemental, toutes les structures décentralisées des assemblées régionales pour qu'ils appuient dans le plaidoyer. Il y a aussi des structures étatiques qui sont très importantes à ne pas oublier, les commissions nationales des droits de l'homme, on a dit que les masses médias peuvent jouer un rôle assez important, que ce soit les réseaux sociaux, que ce soit pour plus de visibilité et de communication sur les groupes discriminés par ascendance et travail. Voilà succinctement ce que le groupe a arrêté pour en vue de l'élévation de la feuille de route pour les Nations Unies. Merci de votre attention.
Challenges of your context, but also could identify useful regional entry points, national entry points, and discuss that the added value of a declaration in supporting the work that we're all doing at the national and regional level. Our final reporting group is the Europe and Latin America group. Do you have a rapporteur for your group who'd like to present? Oui, c'est le channel.
Good morning, everyone. So we discussed 5 main points on things that we could do at the regional level. So number one, I guess this is transcends across to the global level, but it was a rebranding of communities discriminated against on work and dissent. We felt like the name is very long and perhaps it's not very intuitive. If you say that to someone, they don't necessarily know what it means. Indigenous or Afro-descendant, for example, as a concept, it's very emotive. People know what it means when they hear it. And I think this really came out as well when we went to the Costa Rica Mission Assembly the other day. He said to us, why is work in there? What does that mean? We thought a rebranding of this to make it understood as a concept was really important. And we thought that a way to do this would be to hire a good PR or branding person. Someone with expertise in this area. The second strategy that we came up with was we wanted an aggressive communication strategy to get the word out there and to understand CDWD as a concept and to normalise this concept within discussions. So we could do this in a number of ways. So one way we could do this is to speak with communities on the ground, to lobby them, to engage them, to get more people to identify with us. Another one would be to have public events. So instead of just discussing this among ourselves, to, open up this space to other people. And so we could have public speakers, videos, testimonials, those kind of things. Another way we could have this aggressive communication strategy is to approach big organisations for research, reports, and to use our concept within their reporting. So some organisations that could do this could be the IPCC, which is focused on climate change, Anti-Slavery International, Eurochild, and all of these organisations, they have a lot of political power. They influence politicians and governments on their policies. So if they are using our concept within their reporting and what they're saying, that gives us more of a legitimisation in a way. And the final point that we had on the communication strategy is the use of social media. Social media reaches a lot of people that we, may not necessarily be able to reach in person. So having a greater social media presence, we thought was also really important. The third point that we came up with was more research evidence in both the existence of these communities in different countries and also highlighting their experiences of discrimination. So, we could do this through universities, but also what I just mentioned about the IPCC and Anti-Slavery International, these organisations could also support us to do this research and to gather more evidence on these experiences of discrimination. The fourth point was logistics. How are we gonna mobilise together, and how are we gonna know what everyone's doing? So we thought that perhaps we could have an interactive platform so that we know what tasks everyone's doing and what stage they're in, or what, if they've completed them. So perhaps, an interactive task sheet or something like that. Basically everyone knows what everyone's doing. And then finally, we thought that we need funding to do this. So we need to secure funding to make this all happen. We thought, that was really, really key, because without funding, it's not going to happen, basically. So those were the regional goals that we had, and I'd just like to touch quickly on the UN goals that we had a bit of a brief discussion about. So we were saying that we should follow Rita's steps. She's an expert in this field, and she's basically given us a guide on how to reach this declaration. So we thought it was really important to listen to the experts and to build upon her steps and follow her guidance. And 2 points on this as well. We thought that we should harness the SDGs within our message. So the SDGs are really focused on human rights, and they're really focused on environmental rights. So we should use them as a tool to get our message across. And the final thing that we discussed was there are UPRs this year in Brazil, Pakistan and India. So we was discussing ways that we could utilise these UPRs to get these communities or DWD communities involved in these reports. So yeah, that's what we discussed yesterday.
I'd like to make 2 points very briefly, and then maybe a proposition. First point, that if I understand it, this global forum is not purely a Dalit forum. I say this a little in provocation. And I think if you have a global forum, you have to find a political program that is going to benefit people who are here from different places. If it doesn't support their political work, then they will withdraw. I say that because my observation again with indigenous peoples is that you have to have a program which is bringing real benefits or potential benefits for those people to remain with you and support you. So that's the first thing. And the second thing about that is that in developing the rights of what we call here CDWD, once you identify these rights, different groups will say, I want to be associated with that. Those are rights that are good for me and for my community. So the process of developing rights will then draw people in because they'll say, but these are the ones we don't have in our country. We don't have in our situation, and we want these. So I think these are 2 ways to bring people together. You must have a political program that brings concrete benefits to the people who are in this global forum. Now, I want to say something very briefly about branding. I hate this word branding, but it is a very important, the communication of what the group represents. And I think there are a number of elements which I believe are very helpful. Several people have mentioned it. This is a process of decolonization. In my opinion, I've listened to some of you, but this is a process of decolonizing people. These are forms of internal colonization. Every state is fighting against this process of decolonization. So I think it's an element which you really need to stress and prevent. So that's one element. And the second, rather than think about discrimination, think about equality. It's about equality. It's not about discrimination. It's about we want to have the same rights, we want to have access to land, we want to have access to resources like everybody else. Rather than focus on the negative, focus on the positive. And then the other element I think is very important is how do you make this movement part of the 21st century? That is to say, we're not talking about something that's a tradition from the past which ought to have disappeared. We're talking about something, a dynamic of the 21st century. And what is that dynamic? The dynamic is increasing inequality between North-South and within countries. And this process of inequality is going to enslave people. This is what the process is, even in the different forms of, we call it a gig economy in my country. You know, people who actually just get a job 1 minute and then they get a job, they can be fired and so on. It's not the same as caste, I understand, but this is a process of what's going on now. In fact, Brian himself said that yesterday, if I can understand what you said, Brian. So I think put this into the 21st century. Don't say this is something from the past which we ought to have got rid of years ago. This is a process which is happening now, and you are now fighting this new developing process in which people are finding themselves in colonial type situations, people who are unable to get the equality they have a right to. So these are just elements. But my proposal is that I think it's a very important discussion, and you've only got 10 minutes, and I don't know if Paul and Corinne should try to slightly restructure it to give you all the opportunity to say something, because Paul and myself included, we've rather dominated the time. So it's a proposal to you and to the group maybe to try to find a little space so people can talk about this and share views. Thank you. You're the boss? You're not the boss? You're the boss?
You for this session you are.
I am the boss. Well, I'm the boss. So I would like to propose that we open up discussion to hear lots of different points of view, and that whether we can slightly delay the coffee for enough time to allow people to, say something.
Thank both all Divakar and Julian. Divakar was very much emphasizing remembering and reclaiming in reference to our identity. In South Asian country, without exception, the identity comes from only caste. Nobody can deny that. See, when it comes to India defending, we do not have any caste discrimination. Our constitution guarantee every Indians are equal before the law. But it is a culture which dominates, and also it is supported by religious belief system. See, that's what even in your seventh incarnation you are going to be with the same identity, who you are assigned. See, even I am being a Dalit, in my mindset it is already ingrained, who am I, which I cannot forego. Even coming after 25 years, if I say, they always look, what is my caste? And based on that only they wanted to give value, who am I? See, though I am a human being, but my identity is inferior in terms of the caste culture. That is in South Asian countries. But when it comes to, Europe, the Eurocentric culture is always dominated, which either dehumanize or looking others inferior. Because we always look, Eurocentric culture is the dominant culture which everybody wanted to assimilate, or we wanted to go after that, destroying every other culture in our own, background. So the identity is not simply, make me who am I, whether I am inferior or superior, but at the same time destroying my culture, because I wanted to assimilate which is better, like white people's civilization is better. This comparison also makes me kill my spirit. So here I see, first of all, myself, I have to deconstruct my mindset and reclaim who am I. And also, the so-called people who make me inferior, they also learn to deconstruct their mind and understand I am in no way inferior to anybody. See, remembering and reclaiming our identity comes from asserting myself that I am basically a human person. To live with every human rights and human dignity. Otherwise, I am going to kill myself by comparing on par with others, as if that I am inferior. So I wanted to once again thank you, both of you, for emphasizing reclaiming and remembering about my identity.